morning everyone, we're going to be doing some acrylic painting for today's project and hopefully you've prepared everything ready for this one. So first of all, I've got my reference image here, if you can see here, from Pexel Bay, royalty free, link as always is below. I've got a piece of cartridge paper, this is 240 GSM, and I've just covered it quickly with some dark purple. So with dark purple I mixed ultramarine blue with crimson red. Then I mixed a grey, black and white together, and then I mixed the two together so that I get this really nice dark lilac-y shade. And that's going to be important because we've got so much shadow going on in this image, reference image. So the first stage will be to draw my reference image onto my piece of paper using a white pastel pencil, which you can see here. Now it's white because we're drawing onto a dark surface. If it was dark, then if it was light, I would use a dark coloured pencil. You know, you just basically go for contrast. Then because we're painting, I've got some water in here. I've got a palette knife. I've got a range of different brushes as well, so I've got options there. And I've got a stay wet palette. So the stay wet palette will just give me time to keep everything wet and workable. You don't have to have a stay wet palette. You could make your own stay wet palette. There's quite a few people online doing that. Now for colours, I've got black, this is Mars Black, titanium white, and a lot of white because I've got a feeling I'm going to really zap this up. Then some lemon yellow, yellow ochre, cadmium red, crimson red, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue. Okay, you could have a cerulean blue, that would give you some options up here, and you can always use a cadmium yellow rather than a yellow ochre if you wanted to. I also have a little container there of some talcum powder, and the talcum powder is going to be used to thicken up the paint. Now before we get into the painting, obviously we need to get that drawing done, so I'm going to put the lid over there, and that will keep everything ready to work on. And then with my brushes over there along my reference image, grab my white pastel pencil and start a sketch up. Now for this I'm just going for an A4 piece of paper. You could go much bigger if you wanted to, it's completely up to you. Also some people will go dark green rather than dark purple, again it's personal preference. So first things first, we're looking at putting in that horizon line. So if we come over here to the reference image and I use my fingers to work it out, it's just slightly lower than a third down the paper. But before we always do that, we just double check the aspect ratio. So yeah, this A4 piece of paper is slightly too tall. You can see that I'm just looking at that from that point and that point, drawing a line across. You could get away with it with something like this because you could just have a higher amount of sky. But do that before you start marking out your birds because it will obviously have an effect. Okay, so it's around there. Then we're looking at getting in that tree because it's quite large. So I could measure where I want it to go, but I'm just going to do it by eye. I'm holding the end of the pencil, looking at the tree. It comes nearly up to the top and it's got this shape to it. So I'm kind of setting up the basic boundary edge of the tree. And it doesn't have to be perfect, you're going to paint it in, so don't worry if you go too far and things come out a bit further than you want them to. Then I've got that little fence sticking in behind it. Now I'm looking at a tree that needs to come down a little bit lower because I'm looking at how this shadow comes over here, brings that down. That means I've got a few things on the horizon line. I've got my sun, which is quite low. I'm going to be poking through my tree around there. And then I've got this bit of snow, it's got a little bit of shadow over here. I'm kind of plotting it in. Everything's still fairly simple, loose and free. Once I've got that, then I can start painting. Right, so now that we've got that, let's start working on the painting. For this, what we're going to look at doing is leaving the purple for a lot of shadowy tones. So we're kind of painting around the purple filling in areas of colour and then working it up. So you can see here that we've got this yellowy horizon. I'm going to be looking at putting the yellows in, then working up towards the blues, okay, and working around the tree. Do need to remember what yellows you use here because you've got this reflection in the snow, so we need to be mirroring things, okay. Alright, let's just stick that up there slightly. Actually, what I'll do is pull this one down, so that's lower down there. That way, hopefully, you can see both the reference image and the painting. There you go. Alright, now, what we're looking at doing is obviously putting in our yellows and our oranges first. I like going for a bigger brush, but with the smaller stuff, I might come down to a smaller brush. So, if you wanted to, you could always use a palette knife, like I said. I'm going to take some white, and I'm going to add in a little bit of lemon yellow to make a nice bright whitish, she says, whitish yellow. Then I'm going to add in just a little bit of talcum powder to thicken up my paint. This will make it very suitable for palette knife painting. You'll see that it kind of gets a little bit grittier. Don't worry about that too much. Right, then let's get that in around the bottom here. Now because my brush is big, I am kind of using these downward strokes because I want to leave that purple for the bushes on the horizon line. I'm trying to be very careful. Now I've got a little bit where I've gone too low, so if I grab a tissue, I can just wipe that off. Okay. Paint now, it was quite a thick blob of colour. Nothing to worry about. It's acrylics, you can always paint it out later on. Right, let's do a little bit over here. Now I'm finding this is a little bit too light considering what I wanted, so I'm going to be coming back in there in a minute and making it a bit more orangey. Let's grab a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of cadmium red, and it's really good to be adding in the white because it'll make it more opaque and cover up that dark purple background. In that a little bit higher up, and I'm looking at where my oranges are because some of the oranges are lower and some of them are a little bit higher. There's a lot more orange over here to the right. I'm trying to put the paint on nice and thick, and I'm going to take some more of that yellow and just brighten up that lower section a little bit more. So the lemon yellow will give me more of a zappier yellow. A little bit of talcum powder to pick up my consistency, and then I'm going to just add that in. Right, that looks pretty good, so let's take that, mix in some red, make a really nice orangey shade. I'm going a bit too pink at the moment because it's got the white in it. To be balancing that out, making it go a little more toward the orangey spectrum by upping the yellow content and red. That's already got that talcum powder in there because I've been using that, so I'm going to just come down here and I'm going to be bringing in a little bit more orangey tone. It's a bit stronger. On a range of colour changes. Now as it comes up, you should notice that the yellow goes into a kind of greeny twang because it's entering that bluer upper atmosphere section. So make sure your brush is clean, and I'm going to take a little bit of cobalt blue and mix that in to my yellowy white mix. Now I need to make sure I've got a decent quantity of the yellow in there, and I need to make it nice and pale, so use that white to tint it out and soften it down. It's kind of got a lemony yellow, greenish tone. Now some people like to do long brush marks. I prefer this downwards, but you know, it's whatever works for you. Keep the paint thick. Okay. Now we should be moving up into a bluier shade. So I'm going to take that cobalt blue, bring that down. I'm going to add a load of white. I need it nice and soft in the tone. I'm going to increase my talcum powder mix. Well, give it some talcum powder mix. Make the paint nice and thick. And start bringing that in as well. We should have a graduation going on. And then obviously we're going to introduce some of that ultramarine into our cobalt mix, which will give us that stronger, darker tone for the upper areas of the sky. Like I said, these are my natural brush marks. This is just how I work. Feel free to experiment and create your own brush mark direction. So you should be getting something like that. It looks a bit like a silhouette of a tree. Okay, now we need to start working the tree up because we're kind of quite loose around that section of the picture. I'm going to wash my brush out and I'm going to get fresh clean water because my water's going to be really dirty, and then we're going to come back and build up that tree section. Right, now, so for that section around the tree, I'm going to bring my brush size down. Also going to go to a pointed head brush because that means I can get into the detail. It's good having the stay wet. It means I've got the colours that I can start working in around my tree. And the aim of this is to start doing the colours in the background and leaving the purple for the general tree colour. Now you might want to get your finger and just smudge out that initial drawing ink. Obviously don't stick your finger in the wet paint. There's always someone, but that means it'll just mesh into the background. Okay. Right, so let's repeat what we did to start off with. We're going to take that lighter yellow. So I've still got some of down there. It's always wise to keep a colour when you've mixed it, just in case you need it. And then I'm going to start bringing in UV so I can see around here. And I'm kind of leaving the purple for the shadow work. And I'm putting in the sky that I can see in between the branches. Now this can be quite labour intense, so do give yourself some time to do this. The more accurate you are, the better this will appear as an end result. And don't worry if you go over anything like I just did then. I'm going to go over this with a darker tone in a little while. It's no problem. If you find that you want more orange, dab some orange in around there. You might even want to come back over here and add a little bit more orange on top of that colour so that it blends nicely. Right, so you can see there I've just added in different dots behind the tree, shaping up the tree roughly. It's still very raw at this stage, but it'll be enough for it to work. So now let's work down, and I haven't put the sun in. I'm going to put that in towards the end before anyone asks. I know there'll be someone. Let's put in a little bit of white down here, shall we, for the land. So I'm going back to my big brush, and I've got that snow, which is reflecting sunlight. So I'm going to take some of that orange, because I think it's a little bit more milder than I've got mixed up with the sky. I'm going to up the lemon yellow in it as well. And I'm going to bring in some of that along the landscape. Okay, and I'm trying to paint around the tree, which is usually easier said than done. Okay, and then let's bring in a little bit of some crimson to make it go pinky. So like a pinky twang. Some of this over here as it goes towards the shadow. A little bit more pinky by increasing the white. Bring in some of that pinky tone. You could, if you want to, mix a little bit of the cadmium and get a slightly different pink. It's up to you. And then from that pink it goes into a violet. You see it's got loads of beautiful colour mixing in it. If we take a ultramarine blue and a crimson red, we'll get a nice purpley tone, which will be very strong until we take a chunk of white and mix that on the corner. Make a soft lilac-y shade. Now if you add more blue, it'll make it look a bit cooler. Let's bring some of that in as well, around here. Okay, and we can have some other longer tones of shadow. Bring those in like so. Let's take that up. Because everything's nice and thick, you can just flick it and get some different shapes. If you wanted to, you could find that maybe the colours are a bit too bold for you and you want to bring this down a bit. You grab some white and mix the white into the colours that are currently on the paper, so it just softens them out a little bit more. See, like I'm doing here. Trick is to be very confident and just go for it. Don't worry about making any mistakes. It's just a painting. You paint over the top of it if it goes wrong. Right, so let's go down to a smaller size of brush. I'm keeping my flat head to start off with, so you can see I'm working with a flat head and then a pointed head, and then I can build that up. So let's put in now a little bit more of the tree, shall we, and the background. If I go along here and we can look at this bit, can you see how that's faded out on the hill? So let's take some white, let's fade out a little bit of lilac, add in a bit of black to grey it up, and just stick some of that in the background there. Then I'm getting a little bit more of a darker purple. Grey, some trees over here. I'm not completely covering my purple, I'm just starting to draw into it a little bit more, okay, to define things. Let's see here, it's easy to get some points and the insinuation of that darker hill. Okay, I'll leave some purple along the bottom. Then I've got some coming up over here, and we've got a little bit of that dark grey purple. I'm going to boost over here the houses, a bit of background coming in down there, like so. Now I need to work up our tree really. So with the tree, I'm going to again take my purple and I've added in a bit of black. Purpley blue nature of this. If you use just black, it's going to look very flat. You need to be changing the black and mixing different tones into it. So let's get that main trunk down. I'm a little bit wobbly with what I did. So let's paint that in, shall we? And bring it back over here and then down. Gotta get that, can you see that orange glow of the sun? So I'm going to be leaving some of that trunk just to deal with that section. That bit's coming through here. Okay, just like so. And you can see the trunk kind of going up. And there's some obvious little bits up here. Bits coming over here. And we've got that branch just coming out over there as well. So let's change to a pointed head brush. Maybe we can get a little bit more of a finer line. The trick here is not to obliterate everything with that purple tone, it's to add in a little bit of areas of darker shade so that you can get a more refined tree branch shape, but it has more than one tone of shadow. You should see that starting to come together, looking more like that. Now mine's very rough because I'm just whacking it in very quickly, but you can get the idea. Then we also need to get that bench in and sitting down here. So I'm going to just start plotting those in. Again, mine's going to be very loose. No means perfect. Okay, that increased shadow on some of that landscape behind. As you can see, like that. Now you might want to at this stage wash your brushes up, grab a little bit more of that sky colour that you were using and fill in a few bits. The more you fill it in, the more accurate you are, the more realistic it's going to appear as a tree. So do think about doing it, it is worth it, the end result. Right, so let's bring in a little bit more shade work. And now we need some really nice strong hits of the light tones. So make sure your brushes are well cleaned or they'll create cross contamination. And grab some of that white, grab some of that orange, and just boost a few areas. Okay, so everything's dried off a bit, just to allow me to put the sun in without getting loads of cross contamination. You could always like put in more fine detail as well. Because I'm using the Stay Wet palette, everything's nice and wet for me to continue working, which is great because it means like I don't have to do as much colour mixing. Now I'm going to add in quite a lot of white, but have it nice bright yellowy sun shade. Okay, and you can see that just coming down here. So I hope you've enjoyed this. It's a very loose, quick version, but you can see the power of using that dark background and then working up a drawing and then using a painting to basically save you time for not having to lay in so much shadow work. You can make it much tighter. This is just a quick, spontaneous version, but it's nice to have those looser brush marks. So be bold, be fearless, and if you're finding that your work is getting too tight, then use a bigger brush and hold towards the end of the brush. This will loosen you up quite naturally. I hope you've enjoyed it. Go and have a go, But everyone, have a great Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye!